On this episode of You Think You Know Classic Rock, we're going to explore the early history of the Beatles. John Lennon and Paul McCartney first met in July of 1957 at a local church festival where Lennon's band, the Quarrymen, played. 3 months later, McCartney would also join the group. George Harrison, a schoolmate of Paul's, joined the Quarrymen after auditioning by playing Bill Justice's hit Raunchy for John in a very unusual place, on the top of a double-decker bus. George was only 14 at the time, a cause of concern for John. Stu Sutcliffe, a friend of John's from art college, became their bass player in 1960, buying a bass with money he earned from selling one of his paintings. Their first tour saw the group, then known as the Silver Beatles, backing Johnny Gentle over 10 days in Scotland in May of 1960. They adopted stage names, with John going by Long John, George naming himself Carl after Carl Perkins, and Paul changing his last name to Ramone. Many years later, in tribute to McCartney's pseudonym on that tour, Doug Colvin changed his name to D.D. Ramone and convinced the other members of his band to join him and call themselves the Ramones. Needing a full-time drummer for an upcoming residency in Hamburg, Germany, the band hired Pete Best, whose mother, Mona, ran the Casbah, a coffee shop and club located in the basement of her home. The Beatles' famous haircuts were actually worn by many young German men at the time. Sutcliffe was the first Beatle to try it, with Harrison, Lennon, and McCartney soon following suit. However, Best's naturally curly hair made it difficult to style in that fashion. Another Liverpool band playing the Hamburg circuit was Roy Storm and the Hurricanes. Their drummer would often sit in with the Beatles when Best was unable to perform. His name? Ringo Starr. Sutcliffe left the band in 1961 to concentrate on his art, so the group became a four-piece, with McCartney taking over on bass. They soon did their first proper recording session, serving as the backing band for singer Tony Sheridan. Among the songs they recorded was a rock version of the Scottish folk song, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. That fall, a Liverpool record store manager named Brian Epstein began getting requests from customers for the Sheridan Beatles record. Not being familiar with the group, he went to see them perform on November 9, 1961. A few months later, he was hired as their manager. On New Year's Eve, 1961, the Beatles drove down to London in a snowstorm to audition for Decca Records the next day. They recorded 15 songs, including 3 originals, in about an hour. 5 weeks later, Decca's head of A&R, Dick Rowe, rejected the band, saying, quote, "Guitar groups are on the way out." Rowe would make up for this error by signing the Rolling Stones in May of 1963. And besides, the Beatles didn't have to wait very long to get a record contract. Producer George Martin signed them to EMI's Parlophone label a few months later. However, there was still one major problem. Unhappy with the drumming performance of Best, Martin declared that he would use a session musician on the records instead. Hearing this and feeling the same way, the Beatles fired Best on August 16th and replaced him with Ringo Starr. And now, the Fab Four were complete. That's it for today. Stay tuned for more episodes of You Think You Know Classic Rock? Meanwhile, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and check out more of the best in classic rock coverage on UltimateClassicRock.com.